Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of The Effects of Gravity. My name's Seth Soloway, and I'm thrilled and honored to be here today. I currently serve as the director of the Performing Arts Center at Purchase College, where I do many commission-based projects, including several with David Gonzalez, which is one of the reasons I'm here today. But I'm excited to be here today for the same reason that I choose to be a performing arts practitioner at a college, and that's because I love the fusion of the arts and the liberal arts and sciences and how we can use the arts to help teach and educate. So I'm very excited to be a part of this here today. Before we start, a couple of things. I want to invite you to please comment and ask questions in the Facebook live stream. We will answer as many of your questions as we can as we come towards the end of the broadcast. I also want to encourage you to please wear your headphones. As you can see, I've got mine in, as this will offer the best possible sound experience as you watch the broadcast. And now, to get us started, I'm very excited to introduce episode 1, Galactic Merger.
Mutual gravitation between our Milky Way galaxy and our galactic neighbor Andromeda pulls them together from a separation of over 2 million light years. That's 12 million trillion miles. The two will begin a dance we call the galactic merger in about 4 billion years. Tiny dots composing each galaxy in this simulation represent stars, 100 billion of them. As they fall into one another, the galaxies pull, warp, and distort. Soon, they will appear to fragment and then become one. Because of the vast distances between individual stars, none will collide. But gas clouds between the stars do collide, and this will cause new stars to form. So while the galactic merger may look violent from a distance, the interaction will be a gentle and germinal effect of gravity.
Somewhere in the cosmos, 88 years old, she sits at the dining room table, as quiet as a constellation. Teaspoon by teaspoon, her memory disperses into oblivion. Playing whirlyword on her iPad, in the jumble of letters she finds air, hair, chair, then spins again for a new jumble. For 5 hours a day, this is the entirety of my mother's fleeting world. She'd been in Saigon in '68. She'd trekked the Siberian tundra. She dove the Great Barrier Reef, shopped Parisian couture. She spins the wheel, ill, till, still, and reminds me for the 1000th time that life is a dream. She partied in Ibiza, skied the Italian Alps, rolled on ecstasy, bowed to her guru in India, spins the wheel, ace, pace, space. No, really, life is a dream. In 4 billion years, home galaxy will collide with Andromeda. But the apparent catastrophe won't trouble even a single blade of grass, won't dither whatever bio-cyber consciousness survives this cycle of infinite extinctions. They will approach. They will interact with spectacular gravitational dynamics, two becoming one. The way that true lover's caress changed everything forever. She spins the wheel. Dear Madre, dream.
Fascinating. Only makes us look forward more to seeing the next episode, which we'll do in just a moment. But before we get to that, I do want to introduce you to our artists. I'm going to start with Luke Keller. Luke is a professor of physics and astronomy at Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York. His astrophysics research focuses on the formation of stars and their planetary systems. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks, Seth.
So, Luke, I have a few questions for you to get us going. So first, we were talking before we went on the air that you grew up in Alaska. And personally, I've always been fascinated with Alaska. In fact, I was meant to finally go there this summer before the pandemic hit, unfortunately. So we'll make that up. But so given my interest and, of course, the audience interest, I'd love for you to tell us something about how your experience growing up in Alaska shaped your choice to be an astronomer.
Well, my experience growing up in Alaska actually shaped my choice to be a scientist. And I thought I was going to be a life scientist. I, of course, grew up seeing a lot of sky because it's awfully dark in Alaska in the wintertime. But I really was fascinated with the flora and fauna. And I really thought I was going to be, I thought I was going to be a whale scientist. And then I took physics in high school and all bets were off. It was the universe just opened up in a way that I could not have anticipated, and that's where astronomy came in.
I guess we have that in common, Luke, because I took physics in high school and thought, I better be an actor. So, on that note, I'd love to know how did you come to appreciate the arts as a way of exploring and expressing the cosmos?
It actually came through teaching. I watched my colleagues in the arts and humanities teaching and realized that a lot of the challenges that we have as learners and teachers in all of these areas, in the arts and in the sciences, my experiences in the natural sciences, they're very similar. So, for example, poetry is something that a lot of people, if you ask them, will say, I don't understand poetry. It's something that we find difficult sometimes. Same thing happens with science. And so I got fascinated by that question, like how do we bring an appreciation of these things as we teach? So that's really what got me started. And it turns out they're all very similar.
Thank you so much, Luke. As a scientist, this one is interesting to me. You know, I work on a college campus in the arts, but we talk often about my stages and rehearsal studios as laboratories for artists. How do you define the word laboratory?
A laboratory is something that contains something you want to know more about. So for me, the universe is a laboratory.
I love that because it makes anything a laboratory. Great, Luke. It's great to talk to you, and we'll bring you back in just a few minutes. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our next artist, Álvaro Domene. Álvaro is a Madrid-born, New York-based guitarist and composer, operating at the convergence of various styles of contemporary creative music. His sound and compositions are influenced by jazz and Western contemporary classical traditions, as well as metal music. He has released 12 records as a leader and co-leader, and is an active performer in New York's fertile music scene, leading various groups in addition to working with numerous artists. He has performed and taught internationally and recently worked with Joe McPhee, Carl Berger, Elliot Sharp, Vinnie Golia, Henry Kaiser, Michael Bissio, Ben Goldberg, and Weasel Walter, to name a few. In addition, Álvaro co-runs Iluso Records, an independent record label dedicated to support and disseminate creative new music, and he is also the artistic director at the Singularity Music Series in Kingston, New York.
Hello, Seth. How's it going?
Hello. That is quite a bio. Put me through my paces. So I want to start with, from your perspective, what's your earliest memory of outer space?
I think my earliest memory of outer space is probably connected to experiencing reading The Little Prince with my mother when I was super young, maybe like 6 years old or something. I was completely blown away and completely captivated by the whole idea, because I don't think I was aware of, I think space and the universe are probably the most taken for granted thing in our life. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. You've collaborated with so many people, but still, it seems to me, based on your bio and what I read, that astrophysicist was a new one. So how has collaborating with an astrophysicist informed your music?
I really love it. Luke is, among other things, he's acting as an interpreter for us. He explains and translates what the video models are representing. And his explanations quickly trigger my sonic imagination. So after talking to him, watching the videos and reading the text that he is presenting, I immediately start hearing musical ideas that to me seem connected to the concepts that we're exploring, and will hopefully evoke and or complement the visuals for a fully integrated experience from the audience point of view.
That's great, and we appreciate that, especially in these virtual times. So last question, if you weren't a musician, what would you have been?
Actually, probably something to do with sciences. I had the calling for music came up for me very quickly when I was very young. But I was also a science nerd, and like you guys were mentioning earlier, I was in high school. I took all of the science classes: biology, chemistry, physics, maths, all that stuff. And yeah, so probably something to do with actually astronomy or cosmology,
Awesome.
But science had the emotional pull, and it was a little stronger.
Wow.
Made the financially wise decision of dedicating my life to music.
Well, seeing your talents, I can still see why, and we're glad that you made that choice.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. We're going to move
Thank
to
you.
the next artist, and we'll see you in just a minute.
Sure.
So now I'm thrilled to introduce my friend David Gonzalez. David is a nationally touring poet, musician, and storyteller. He's a fellow of the Joseph Campbell Foundation, and he has received numerous commissions and awards. His doctoral dissertation studied the intersection of improvised music and mythology with psychotherapeutic context. David.
Hey, so nice that you could be here, that we could share this virtual space together.
It's wonderful. Nice to have you. And
Let's do the elbow thing.
it feels like normal times for a few minutes, so I'm grateful, David. So I want to start by asking you, how do you go from an astronomical phenomenon and then move over to the blank page you face as a poet? How does what you see in the astrophysics make it to the page?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, you look up at the night sky. I look up at the night sky, and there's a funny feeling of awe and also somehow reassurance that it recontextualizes for me the little things of life. The wonder is, to use the word, inspiring. And through Luke, he found these incredible simulations, which are not just ideas, but all the simulations that Luke has presented Álvaro and me with are based on data sets. This is not someone's imagination. This is as close as we can get through the traditions of science to representing the actual phenomena. So Luke shows these images, which are like spectacularly thrilling and exciting, and then his explanation is even more mind-blowing. So there's a spark of awe and wonder that goes in there. And then the blank page is always the blank page. I learned early on to trust my unconscious mind. So a lot of going with the first associations, going with the first ideas, and letting them, as far out as crazy as they could be, let them have their place. And so that's how it begins for me. And then, of course, revise.
Great. Thank you. I'm so glad this next question is here personally, even though, of course, this is about far more than me. But selfishly, I've known you for such a long time. We've had so many amazing experiences together. But I so think of you as the artist that you are that I've never asked you this. If you weren't an artist, what would you be? What would you be doing right now?
Well, I've been thinking about that. Part of me, and maybe I'll even get to do this, when I retire sometime, is to be like the guy who takes the tickets to let you into the forest, like a forest ranger.
I love that.
I'm not going to be the actual forest ranger, but for me, being connected to the forest is a big thing. So that's one thing. And if I were to be a scientist, which when I was a kid, I thought I would be an archaeologist. My mother gave me this wonderful book about world civilization. So archaeology was something I'm really was interested in and am interested in. But it would be something more close at hand. I don't know that I could actually show up for work and contemplate the infinite universe every day. Fuses would blow. But, I interviewed a biologist once who said, I study this Earth because this is the planet we can touch. And I love that. It's the planet at hand. And so I think if I were to be a scientist, it would be something more on that level.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I love this next question as well, because as I said earlier, when I was speaking with Luke, I came up through the arts. I really struggled with science. Mm-hmm. And I think now, as I've watched all this and listened to all of you, maybe there was a miss in not seeing the art in the science at that time. I just got frustrated. So I'd love to hear from you. How does science square with the imagination when most people think of those as two completely different things?
Yeah, well, I love what Luke just said about how he defines a laboratory as a place where we don't know things, the field where we don't know things. And among Álvaro and Luke and myself, we've often talked about our different disciplines as laboratories, with Luke's encouragement, really. So I think for me, poetry and storytelling is a way to explore feeling, thought, imagination, to conjure meaning out of life. And this project for me is really this kind of polarity about the lived experience, the emotional experience, the imaginative experience of being a sentient mortal being. And the fact of cosmology, the fact of astronomical data and the science, and the space of trying to understand and square those things, to use the word again, is just exciting for me. So the frame, again, would be, these are both laboratories of experimentation and to come to understanding, knowledge, and hopefully some kind of wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great place to leave off our introduction of the three of you and our question and answer portion before we get started with episode 2, which is structure and formation.
Yeah, structure and formation. I think we should really bring Luke Keller back in to talk about what we're about to see and why it's significant. Hey, Luke.
Hey, so when people see the interaction of galaxies that we just saw in episode 1, I often get the question, where the heck do those galaxies come from? Like, what's up with those guys? Were they just always there? So the next episode is our attempt to address the question, where do galaxies come from?
Bang, flash. Space, time, matter, and energy live together in a crowded crib at the corner of Mystery Street. Their lips and limbs entangled at the busy spot. As singular as lovers, dissolved by simultaneous moan, then gaze. They'd hung out this way since, well, flash. This new universe is born. A nanosecond old, she cries, and there is sound. She stretches, and there is movement. She lifts her head, and there is curiosity. Places a hand, shuffles a knee, crawling, creating millimeter by sacred millimeter. 14 billion years old, or young. Your choice. She keeps on going. She, he, they keep on growing in all directions at once. Each galaxy moving away from every other galaxy, other galaxy, other galaxy. And then, dear lovers, there's you.
Large chunk of the universe, millions of trillions of miles wide, evolves from a foggy web of dark matter and gas into a cluster of galaxies. Each galaxy will contain tens, even hundreds of billions of stars, bound in mutual orbits, an astonishing effect of gravity. The process begins less than 1 billion years after the flash we call the Big Bang and ends in the present time. A clock in the lower left displays time elapsed since the beginning of the observable universe. Colors begin with shades of blue and pink, indicating density, not brightness, of dark matter. We call it dark because gravity tells us it's there, but we cannot see it. Dark matter emits no light. We now see the simulation colors fade to shades of green and red, indicating density of luminous, normal matter, atoms like hydrogen and helium. Explosions of gas result from supernovae, stars exploding, and from intensely hot matter orbiting supermassive black holes in the centers of galaxies. Both effects of gravity collapse matter to high density and energy, inflating bubbles of gas into the space between galaxies. Shades of purple now show us the density of gas made of atoms heavier than helium. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, even iron, the stuff we're made of. Galaxies form where matter density is highest and the effects of gravity are strongest.
We return to a view of dark matter density, now much more concentrated around the newly formed galaxies in the present time.
Wow, that was fantastic, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing that. Personally, I love it because I love watching the fusion of your talents, the poet, the musician, the educator, and you all have many more talents than that, but that's what we're seeing here. It speaks to me because it speaks to the reason why I like to do my work on a college campus, because I love what we were talking about, that idea of the Performing Arts Center as a critical classroom, as we call it, or as a laboratory, as we would call it in this context. And you guys here are showing us why. That's what we want the arts to do, right? To fuse things so that it can help not only entertain, but educate, heal, do all the wonderful things that we know it can do. So I think we've got a prime example here. I have a few more questions for you, and then we'll take some questions from the audience on the Facebook Live feed. So for Alvaro, first, I'm curious, what goes through your mind as you play to these images?
Ideally, I'm not thinking. I work hard on practicing and arranging the pieces in a way that when it's time to perform or to record, I'm just a vessel for all these sounds to come out as a reaction to the visuals, the physics, and filter through the compositional algorithms that I have set for myself.
And just as a follow-up to that, because I'm curious, and I know many of us who aren't musicians think of things like this, when you're putting the piece together, are you watching as you're putting it together, or do you watch, internalize, and then work?
The way I usually do it is I first listen to Luke. So we discuss, okay, we're gonna do this. This is the concept. This is this is the phenomenon that is occurring on the video. And I think we discuss the concept first, then we watch the video, and both things, like I mentioned earlier, I immediately start hearing things in my head immediately. So basically, the limitations that the explanation of the concept and the video imply make me narrow down the whole the pool of musical resources from which I'm gonna pick up things to put a piece together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And thank you so much for that insight into your process.
Of course.
So, Luke, as a non-scientist, and many of us, how exactly do we know what we know about such vast time and space as we're seeing in the show here?
So how do we know what we know is my absolute all-time favorite question. And the short answer to your question about what we just saw is we know about the universe the same as we know about the Earth. So we know how galaxies form, and we know that this is probably what's happening because we observe galaxies. So we make observations for things that distant. Of course, we use telescopes to make these observations. And then we use the scientific process, and it's the same process, whether you're studying little bugs crawling on the ground or microorganisms or the climate or the universe.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. So, David, this is a sexy, fluid version of the universe. Tell me about this poem. What's up with this?
Well, like I said, first choices. This idea of creation, the reference for life is sex. Something happens. There's some interaction. There's always this thing that, space, time, matter, and energy, they were inert like things. They're just stuck together in this like singularity at the beginning of the beginning. But my imagination goes to some dynamic interaction, and creation comes out of some kind of juicy spot. Anyway, plus it's something we could all relate to. As I was writing it, it was she. She lifts her head. But then it becomes she, he, they. It's much bigger than gender. It's much bigger than a he or a she, or actually even a they. It's about creation itself and the magic and mystery of it. But in a lot of the work I'm doing in this project is trying to find vocabularies that can bridge these vast, spectacular, almost unfathomable concepts with things we can really, that we're familiar with. Like in the first episode, it was about my mom, and my mother's world in this galactic merger. And in this one, it was about a child growing, but sort of this birthing and this sexy, juicy process of birthing and coming to life. So anyway, again, first choices. I don't know if they're the best choices, but they are the first choices.
I have to say too, I was excited to and fascinated by that depiction of your mom, because of course we've worked on shows where your mom also appears in different places in your life. So it's great to get that picture of her. So for all of you, and I think this is an important question now more than ever, because we're thinking about in the arts, how do we make art for a virtual moment, but also get back into theaters? And it occurs to me that simultaneously, this works beautifully well the way it is, but you must miss that interaction with each other as performers. I certainly miss being in person with you and feeling the audience. So all that said, what are your intentions for the Effects of Gravity going forward? Where is this going?
Well, let me jump in and just say, we've all, like everybody, pivoted. I've done a number of performance workshops at Ithaca College and here in the Hudson Valley. So we have been working in this virtual space for 6 months now. But the goal is to bring this into a live performance space. Where these videos would be projected in beautiful, vivid color in a gigantic screen. And Álvaro will be performing live with his amazing pedal array. And Luke will come out and really interact with the audience and instruct in his very personable way of bringing information to folks. And that I would be performing live as a poet as well. So the idea is we're actually kind of doing a virtual laboratory with the expectation, may I say, that we will go live in a season. Does that sound right, you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This must be experienced live. It will totally change your life in some way if you do.
That's wonderful. Well, I look forward to coming back as an audience member when that happens.
Awesome. And we would love to, hear from folks on Facebook Live. Any questions or comments that you have, please just jump in. We'll respond to you as soon as you send us a note. So come on.